The Arkham series is a successful set of games that fully allows the players to become the Dark Knight. It respects the character while creating its own story and providing gameplay that makes the player fully embrace what it's like to be Batman. But there were Batman games that came out before the Arkham series. Some were successful in capturing aspects of the character or taking other types of games and integrating Batman into them. Generally, these games were fun to play, but there was always that feeling that there would be a true Batman experience out there. Little did we know that a relatively unknown studio would come in after their first title and tackle the Batman universe. While the early images and trailers of Arkham Asylum did look very promising, many were skeptical as there was plenty of badly executed superhero games. But Rocksteady aimed to change that perspective, and with that, they had something to prove. They had the keys to one of the best licenses, and they were going to show the world their potential. I present to you a look back at Batman Arkham Asylum. In 2006, a fairly unknown studio, Rocksteady, released their first game, Urban Chaos. Urban Chaos put the player into the shoes of an individual who was part of a riot response squad. It was a first-person shooter where the player needed to take the city back from a deadly gang. You had a variety of weapons and tools to help you out. Rocksteady showed that they could make a fun first-person shooter for their first outing. But this wasn't going to be the game that really put them on the map. Urban Chaos was released at an odd time, as it was on the original Xbox and PS2 when the 360 was just getting started. While this doesn't specifically relate to the Arkham games, it shows where the studio began and how they were going to change the scene for superhero games. Their publisher had the rights to Batman, and at the same time, Rocksteady was working on a few different prototypes. Their publisher liked the work that Rocksteady was producing and asked if Rocksteady could take and learn what they have and apply it to the Batman license. Rocksteady accepted and began work on their new Batman game. At the start of the development, the studio was made up of 40 people, and this grew to about 60 during the making of their new Batman game. This is a much smaller size for a big AAA game, but you'll see that Rocksteady had the right people in the right place to make a quality game. Pre-production saw the developers becoming familiar with as much Batman material as they could. They felt they had a responsibility to get the character right, especially since they were not working with a blank slate in a new universe. Batman is an established character and has a rich history. Thankfully, this new Batman game was not restricted by being a movie tie-in game. Rocksteady was given the freedom to create a completely new Batman story. The developers were fans of the Batman films, and they also familiarized themselves with the comics. The studio decided to focus their efforts on having the setting of their game be Arkham Asylum. Arkham provides a rich history for the character, since at one point all of his foes have been there. By using Arkham as their main location, they could reasonably justify having many characters be within one location without it feeling forced. They wanted the story to take place over one night. By having it at Arkham, the story could have Batman in a situation where he is faced up against his worst foes from all sides. They wanted it to be dark, grounded, and to use villains that would challenge him in different ways. The setting of Arkham allowed them to provide a few main villains as the focus, and then give many others lots of winks and nods that would feel appropriate for the story. With their love for the character and the respect for his history, Rocksteady felt they needed the right voice actors to voice these characters. A few beloved voice actors from the Batman animated series returned to voice their characters again in Arkham Asylum. Kevin Conroy is back as Batman, and Mark Hamill returned as well for the Joker. Paul Dini, who was one of the main talents behind the animated series, was the game's writer and, when needed, the Batman consultant on the game. The Batman animated series is a beloved piece of Batman's history, and most fans see Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill as the definitive versions of the characters they portray. Rocksteady was making the right decisions and putting in a lot of effort to really execute that Batman-like feel for this game. With this, they wanted to incorporate not only the physical aspect of Batman, but to include his detective skills along with the psychological aspects of our hero. Rocksteady felt it was important for how they used cutscenes within Arkham Asylum. The developers felt that cutscenes should be used to further the story and explore character relationships. It was important for them to not show elaborate action sequences that the player could not then do within the gameplay. Rocksteady felt the grand action cutscenes would cause the player to be disengaged from the experience and ask why I'm not able to do that within the game. Rocksteady wanted a combat system that made the player both feel like Batman and present the character's skills. Batman is a skilled fighter, and the developers wanted that presented within the game. Within early development, the combat system had a rhythmic-like flow that interweaved with the enemies you fought and the music. As stated in some interviews, it was similar to the musical games that were being made at the time, but focused more on combat. This system was completely reworked into the combat system that was eventually used. The combat does have a rhythmic-like flow that presents a system that is easy to get into and satisfying to master when using all of Batman's moves and maximizing your combos. To balance out the fistfights, Rocksteady implemented an entirely separate game mode that focused on stealth and fear. The fistfights focused on Batman's skills with martial arts, while the stealth segments focused on how he can be a deadly predator and that he's taking out each enemy out one by one. Enemies can be seen to display fear as Batman is closing in on them, along with being able to toy with them based on whatever gadget you're using. Batman Arkham Asylum was influenced by other large titles like Zelda and Metroid for how the player would interact with the environment. Batman would have a few different gadgets at his disposal, and he would slowly collect them throughout the game to help him conquer the environment. There were plenty of optional Riddler challenges to complete, and sometimes the player would see one but not have the right gadget to obtain it, giving the game that Metroid feeling of being able to use new items to unlock parts that you previously couldn't get to. The GameCube exclusive Eternal Darkness was another influence. Within Eternal Darkness, the game would mess with the player as by pretending to change the channel, causing their character to fall through the ground, and more. Rocksteady used this as their inspiration for their Scarecrow sequences. Developing this new Batman game was no small or easy endeavor. Rocksteady was aiming to create a truly great game that fully respected the character and effectively put the player within the shoes of the greatest detective. In August 2009, Batman Arkham Asylum was released to the world. Our story starts out with Batman bringing the Joker to Arkham Asylum. During the intro, Batman sees a few familiar faces that he helped to put away. Prisoners from Blackgate Prison are being transferred to Arkham at the same time the Joker is being admitted. Batman meets up with Jim Gordon and is on alert because he feels like the Joker gave up too easily, like he wanted to be captured. Next, the Joker escapes and Batman is in pursuit. Batman is receiving support from Oracle and he finds out that Joker had this planned all along. During his pursuit of the Joker, Batman saves all of the guards he comes across, and then he catches up with the Joker. Batman fights the Titan, but the Titan quickly appears to get confused and then dies. Joker makes a remark mentioning that he needs better test subjects and then escapes. Joker informs Batman that he had an Arkham guard as an inside man. Officer Bowles captured Commissioner Gordon, and now Batman needs to rescue his friend before pursuing the Joker. Batman works his way back to the last place he saw the two of them together and uses the traces of alcohol from Bowles' flask to track him. Batman catches up with Bowles, but Joker has him killed before Batman can get any information from him. Riddler also reveals himself and provides a consistent sub-story throughout the main narrative. Batman then gets a sensor alert regarding the Batmobile and makes his way back to the car. While there, Batman finds Gordon's pipe and uses the traces of tobacco to track Gordon. This leads Batman to Arkham Medical. Upon entering Arkham Medical, the doctors are in need of rescuing. Following the rescue, Batman is gassed by the Scarecrow. This gas warps Batman's reality. Batman sees Jim being attacked and he follows. When he finds Jim, it's revealed that Jim is dead. Batman then encounters his parents before Scarecrow reveals himself. Batman needs to avoid Scarecrow's haze and shine a light on him to gain back control. After surviving Scarecrow's attack, Batman finally rescues Gordon. Gordon informs Batman the Joker is hiding something. That something turns out to be Bane. He looks a lot weaker, and that Dr. Young is responsible for draining Bane's venom. Joker pumps the venom back into Bane, and a fight breaks out. Following Bane's defeat, Batman is now in pursuit of Dr. Young. Batman decides to regroup in his secret Batcave on the island. He learns that Dr. Young was changing the formula to make a Titan-like formula. Batman makes his way to Arkham Mansion to find Dr. Young. Oracle informs Batman that Young was working with Joker, but at some point had a change of heart as she was refusing his payments for her work. While searching for Young, Batman comes across henchmen trying to find Young's notes. Batman disposes of the henchmen and finds the notes and destroys them before anyone else can get to them. Joker's voice is heard off the comm saying that Victor Zsasz has the doctor. During Batman's search, he is hit again with Scarecrow's toxin and is forced to relive the death of his parents. After beating back Scarecrow for a second time, Batman finds Dr. Young and takes care of Victor Zsasz. She informs him of a production plant in the Arkham Gardens for Titan. Before she can provide any more information, she is killed. To gain easier access to Arkham's facilities, Batman rescues the Warden from Harley Quinn and then seeks to find the hidden production lab. At the lab, Batman learns that the Titan formula has mutated with one of Ivy's plants. Since the Titan serum is affecting Ivy's plants, he pays her a visit. She is concerned for her plants, and Batman asks about a potential anti-serum. She says that a plant could be used to do that, but it's found in Killer Croc's lair. With this new information, Batman seeks out Killer Croc. During his search, he is hit by the Scarecrow's toxin for a third time. This causes Batman to experience the story again, but with the Joker and his position swapped. Batman contends with the Scarecrow for a third time. Scarecrow escapes before Batman can catch him. Batman eventually catches up with the Scarecrow, and he threatens to throw his toxin into the water supply. Before he can do that, Killer Croc attacks Scarecrow. While in Croc's lair, Batman finds the plants to aid him in making an antidote. Batman escapes Croc's lair and then makes his way to the Batcave. Here he has the time to make an antidote and then sets the computer to continually make more. At this time, Ivy's plants seem to be acting violently to the Titan serum and causing damage to the island. Before Batman can stop Ivy, he learns from Oracle that the Joker is planning on contaminating Gotham's water supply with the Titan serum by releasing Arkham's water supply into Gotham. Batman stops the contaminated water from spreading into Gotham and heads to Ivy. He confronts Ivy and her mutated plants. With the villains all taken care of, Batman only has one more person to contend with, the Joker. The Joker leads Batman to his location. Batman dispatches all of his thugs, and Joker hits Batman with the Titan formula, and Batman uses the antidote on himself. Joker reacts by hitting himself with the Titan formula, and then a final fight breaks out. I really enjoyed the premise and execution of Arkham Asylum's story. I very much enjoyed the premise of restricting Batman into a smaller location for Rocksteady's first game. Like they intended during the development of the game, Arkham allowed Batman to have a main set of villains for the story while having others interweave into the main narrative, along with having lots of hidden extras and cameos. What I would have loved to have Gotham to explore, keeping it smaller for the first entry, I think allowed for Rocksteady to really focus on the specific story and setting. I also enjoyed how Batman is essentially on his own on the island with only limited backup from a few allies and Oracle providing him information through the comms. And most of all, I love how this was a Batman solo adventure. He has plenty of sidekicks and the members of the Bat family can create some very interesting dynamics. But I liked how it was mostly a solo story for Batman. In this aspect, along with others, it showed restraint from the developers to not use certain characters and tell a story they felt was appropriate for the situation rather than throwing everything that Batman could face all at once. This leaves room for people to experience new villains in the future entries. What I appreciated from the narrative is how it threw the player into the adventure and gave us only the necessary setup with the beginning moments of the story. We didn't receive backstory for all the big characters and just experience the adventure. Optional backstory was provided through the environmental storytelling and the collectibles. The optional tapes would provide some context and background on these villains. I felt like the execution of this did wonders for the pacing. The adventure consists of Batman consistently moving from objective to objective, trying to put out fires as Joker creates chaos. The pacing is enhanced through how the developers chose to tell their story. The game uses a lot of cutscenes, but they keep things relatively short and concise. During gameplay, story is conveyed through Batman talking to all of his allies along with the environment. You are always within the story and continually experiencing it through different means. Another thing to make note of is how the game really makes you feel at home as a Batman fan. Whether you are a fan of the comics, films, or the animated series, you feel like they nailed the character of Batman and his world. I really want to commend the developers on how they tackled the Scarecrow sequences. I feel like a lesser developer would have just used these sequences to show some creepy imagery, but here Rocksteady used these as opportunities to get into Batman's head and creatively show his history in a different way. 2 of the 3 sequences focus on Batman's parents' deaths and the burden of this on Bruce. It shows his guilt regarding their deaths and how he always carries them with him. The marketing team deserves praise too because these sequences were hidden from the trailers, and this was a right choice to make. This was the start of how Rocksteady always showed you enough in the trailers to get you excited, but then they made sure to keep some very nice secrets for you for the game. Before we move on to the gameplay, I want to praise how authentic the story, characters, and world felt. This felt like Batman, and it wasn't just because of the returning voice talent from the animated series. The look of the game, along with how the characters acted, were appropriate for Batman's world. I do believe that Rocksteady succeeded in creating a situation where Batman is stuck in a Joker-run madhouse, and it creates an awesome narrative. The level design presented within Arkham is similar to being stuck on Shadow Moses Island in Metal Gear Solid, with the use of finding new items to help you progress like in a Metroidvania title. Batman starts off with a limited arsenal and then will slowly acquire new items like explosives, a bat claw, and more. These items will help you traverse the environments better while also giving you opportunities to return to prior areas and grab other collectibles. The game is loaded with collectibles, and they are in the form of Riddler trophies and Riddler challenges. The trophies will require you to survey the environment and see where you can use one of your gadgets to earn that trophy. The trophy provides extras within the game, as well as additional experience points for Batman. The challenges are used by Rocksteady to provide some nice winks and nods to other Batman characters or stories. Usually you will need to search the environment for a specific item, location, or a character to complete that challenge. I very much enjoyed these challenges, and I felt like these collectibles were appropriate to fit the setting of the game. This would be a place where Batman would find many different items from his various foes, along with bumping shoulders with many of them in the facility. These collectibles are also given a subplot of their own, as a means for Batman to beat the Riddler at finding all of his trophies and completing his challenges to track him down. I like how the collectibles have a story purpose, and it's a lighter subplot compared to the main game. Essentially, the game gives context to these collectibles instead of just being these items that the player needs to grab because the game said so. There's a narrative purpose along with rewards for the player, with background information on the characters and villains, along with experience points. Arkham has a light level up system with a few upgrades to earn throughout the adventure. You can upgrade the suit to have more armor along with enhancing his gadgets. The level up system is simple and you are provided experience points for almost everything you do. While exploration is a feature of Arkham, the game establishes 2 pillars for how you will be experiencing most of the adventure, through the free flow combat and the stealth sections. The free flow combat became a staple of the Arkham series, and it definitely changed the game. Like I said before, Rocksteady essentially wanted a combat system that allowed the player to feel like Batman and have that represented on screen. Something that was said a lot about the combat was how it was easy to learn but hard to master. The combat is very easy to get into. You have a few buttons for your moves like an attack, evade, stun, counter, and then some regulated to your gadgets. Completing combat encounters within the story can be done without really appreciating the combat itself. The combat is based on increasing your combo. If you land a hit, your combo will go up. If you are hit or you miss a hit, then you need to start over. Enemies defeated with higher level combos will net you with more experience points and give you more upgrades sooner. If you earn a few combos in a row, you can perform an instant takedown move on any enemy. If enemies are knocked down and stunned, you can perform a ground pound for more points. The combat is less like a traditional action game like God of War, Ninja Gaiden, or Devil May Cry, but rather a rhythmic type game that goes with the action. Successfully using all of your moves makes the action on screen look like a choreographed action sequence that you would find in a film. There's a few other effects that help to give information to the player while also providing some style to the action itself. Right before you have enough combos to perform a takedown move, the game will go into slow-mo for a few seconds, indicating that you are earning the ability to use a takedown, and this provides you with some time to survey the environment. Quick reaction time is needed for the fights, along with managing the different enemies in the combat arena, so any additional seconds can help you out in the battlefield. Most enemies will try to attack you with their fists, but some will use stun batons, knives, and guns to take you out, and that will hurt your combo. I found that the additional challenge rooms provided after you beat the story is where I truly learned to appreciate the inner workings of the combat system. While in the campaign, the main goal is to complete the combat encounters so that you can progress with the story. While maximizing your combos and really learning the system is rewarded, but it really isn't needed for the story mode. The challenge modes give the player set point goals that they need to achieve to fully complete the challenge room. To achieve these goals, you need to maximize the potential points from the enemies and control the room. Really learning this and getting this down is very satisfying, and it takes that initial feeling of the combat system into being even deeper and more rewarding. The simplistic structure to the moves does make you feel like you are unleashing Batman on the enemies with every input that you do. And I think this is why this combat gets praise. It's very easy to pick up and understand, and the action looks impressive, and you can take the combat a step further and figure out how to be like Batman while also maximizing your points from each encounter. The other pillar is focused on the stealth sections. Here Batman is presented with a room and a set amount of foes to take down. You cannot earn health back during these situations, and the enemies can gun you down really quick. There's a nice feeling of vulnerability and danger mixed with Batman's skill here. In each of these rooms are gargoyles for Batman to sit on, and you can swing between them to get a better vantage point. To further assist you in surveying the area is Batman's detective vision, which will highlight all the threats in the room along with providing you with other useful information. This mode provides you with a lot of information that it can be really easy to keep this on throughout your whole playthrough. In these sequences, Batman can sneak up behind enemies for a silent takedown, do a very Batman-like inverted takedown from a gargoyle, or glide and kick enemies, or use some of his gadgets to bait the enemies into a trap. You have to try and think of this mode completely differently from the free flow combat. The stealth is less reactionary and more so about a game of patience and strategy. Along with this, it's another variation on putting the player in the role of Batman and trying to control the room just like how he would. A few changes come into these challenge rooms, with some enemies getting spooked and guarding one specific location, enemies destroying gargoyles restricting your safe movement, or other enemies getting alerted to the guards that you took down. The free flow combat and stealth do not work together in how they operate, but rather these two pillars as a whole create these two forms of action that very much presents Batman. With these two forms of gameplay being departmentalized, this allows the game to switch between these two, providing two different gameplay experiences that represents two sides of the character. The free flow combat provides the fantasy of being a trained and skilled martial artist, and the stealth allows the player to be the Dark Knight and strike from the shadows. To further change up the action are the boss encounters and set-piece battles that you will participate in. There are a good handful of encounters where you need to fight a henchman that has been infected with Titan. You have to hit them with the batarang and then get a few hits on them before they are stunned, and then you can ride the henchmen and run them into other enemies. This is both funny to do and very satisfying. The Titan henchmen are used a few too many times as set-piece boss fights within the game, and more variety would have been appreciated here. But they are always fun to grab onto because you can mindlessly swing at other enemies. Other memorable boss fights are the Scarecrow sequences, which are very simple in gameplay execution and work really well for their narrative focus. They pop up 3 times and each one is memorable. The Ivy boss fight is rather enjoyable because of the scale of the fight. You need to take down a large plant and the people she is mind controlling. Some have taken issue with the final fight with the Joker, and the worst I've seen is that people think it's too easy. I do agree that even on hard, the fight is rather easy compared to the prior combat room, but I still enjoyed the fight as I finally got to hit the Joker after all of his shenanigans, and that was satisfying. Plus, the final punch in the cutscene is just the icing on the cake. Since Rocksteady is not a developer that accepts the bare minimum, I do love the personal death sequences that the player will get depending on when they fall within the game. It usually results in a memorable taunt from the villain that you are facing. One area that I was glad the game touched on was the use of Batman being a detective. There are a few situations where he needs to set up a crime scene to find a clue to progress the story. These were really basic in how they were executed and something that would be improved upon for later sequels. But I like that the game acknowledged this side of the character even if it was in a simplistic way. It is often an area that is ignored about him even though he is known as the world's greatest detective. I struggle to really find flaws with this one, and maybe some of that comes from my own bias of the character and the world. I generally feel like Rocksteady both understood Batman and knew how to adapt that character into a memorable video game. There have been plenty of Batman games that came out before, and some of them were rather fun, but I do think that Arkham Asylum really did change the presented quality of comic book characters within a game. This project was not a quick cash grab like many movie tie-in games, but rather they looked at the license and saw the potential of fully realizing the character in a video game. Rocksteady's successful execution can be seen from the systems they incorporated for the combat and stealth encounters, the importance of the visual style, along with consulting with Paul Dini and using the same voice actors from the animated series. There was a care and execution that isn't seen all the time within the video game medium, and it should be praised for how well done it is here. Rocksteady built the foundation for their Arkham series with Arkham Asylum. In many ways, Arkham Asylum became the benchmark for other adaptations to be compared to, along with many other games lifting inspiration from Arkham with its detective vision and free-flow combat. Rocksteady's Arkham Asylum respected the Dark Knight, and that was seen with every aspect of their game.